I heard that you're about to see something very clearly, and whatever has been obscuring your vision is being removed. My name is Solarah. I'm here to share with you some of my downloads, some of what I've been channeling, maybe some guidance, and maybe we'll get into some cards too. I'd like to say welcome to those of you who are my true supporters and have been with me, either from the beginning or have joined me along the way. Those of you who are allies and are new here, you are welcome too. Thank you for being here. I want to take a moment to also say thank you to all of you for your beautiful, beautiful comments on the last video. I have read through them. I haven't gotten the chance to respond to anything yet. I do like to take a moment and try to respond, which is why oftentimes it takes me a little bit longer to do that, to get through all the comments, but I did read them. I wanted to say thank you. I'm glad you'll feel in the blonde. It's a return. I haven't been blonde in a moment, and I haven't been blonde on this channel, so it's a return. So thank you so much for all of your sweet words and your messages and your sentiments. I do appreciate you guys. So we're going to get into the message for today. It is Friday, the 6th of June. We are in the 6/6 portal, and energies are flowing very potently right now. And there's a lot going on. I'm just finishing up my writing for my platform for today. It started off as a sunrise salutation. I'm still putting finishing touches to it, so it will be a moonrise musing at this point. But I do go into, some of the information around polarity and what is occurring right now, and I will be getting into that properly with another reading or video very soon also, because Gemini is the third sign on the zodiac wheel. And it is the first sign that begins to show us or introduce us or integrate within us the idea of how we use polarity as magicians. Okay, so what is occurring right now and what occurs anytime we're going through a major transit in Gemini, but right now because of ascension, because of healing journeys, which is all interconnected, and because we are moving in the waxing phase of the moon where energy is growing, and the full moon in Sagittarius is a moon of liberation and putting things back where they belong, because it works alongside Gemini, that is its sister sign, in terms of working with polarity to create order. But Gemini introduces us to the magic and the lessons of how we can begin to utilize polarity to bring all things into harmony, beginning with self. So I don't know why I felt the need to share that. Maybe it will come up in what it is I have to say, but we'll get into the crux of the message now. So you're about to see something very clearly, and whatever has been obscuring your vision is being removed. And this message may be for you if you felt like you've been walking under a cloud of energy recently and you don't quite know how to break it into parts to see clearly. I want to maybe piggyback on that, talk about Gemini, that mini spiel about Gemini I made a few moments ago. And that is that Gemini season oftentimes is rife with psychic attack energy. And the reason for that is because Gemini is the sign that is the first air sign of the zodiac, right? So it's the youngest air sign. And if you want to connect Gemini to its tarot themes, the main cards of Gemini are the 8 of Swords, the 9 of Swords, and the 10 of Swords. It closes out the sword suit. So as such, the 8, 9, and 10 of Swords in tarot are all about the ways that your mind is used against you and the ways you allow yourself to stay trapped in mental energies that actually are not real. So Gemini deals with a lot of mental magic, psychic attacks, things that are designed to get you to not see as It really is. So a lot of projection, illusion. If ever there was a sign of the zodiac where mirror magic is really powerful, for better or for worse, because you can use mirror magic for beautiful things also. But I'm talking about people who use mirror magic for stealing other people's beauty, thoughts, image, soul mimicry, spells, destiny swapping, all of that. Mirror magic is used for that very potently. And Gemini is like the sign of the zodiac that is very, very powerful for utilizing projection and reflection for the purpose of creation. So I'm going to say that again. Gemini is a sign of the zodiac that is very, very powerful for utilizing projection and reflection for the power of creation. And I should also throw in there for the power of destruction, because both go hand in hand. Okay, so bear that in mind with how it is you're thinking this season, how it is you're feeling in response to your own thoughts, and be very, very mindful. Like the Eight of Swords will be a big lesson. It teaches you this. Presently, we're in Nine of Swords energy. So the Nine of Swords is 10 to 19 degrees Gemini. And then finally, the culmination of the energy in the sword suit is the 10 of Swords, which is the 20 to 29 degrees of Gemini. And the full moon in Sagittarius is happening right at that 20 degree. So, and actually that card came out earlier on today for when I was writing the Sunrise Salutation, and I pulled cards. That card came out from my Modern Witch Tarot, but the card that came out was the 10 of Swords, where it says everything is fine. It came out in the guidance position, right? So we're moving into the 10 of Swords, but we are presently in the 9 of Swords. But the point is that a lot of the things you think are your thoughts don't actually belong to you. A lot of the things that you think are your thoughts don't belong to you, not organically at least. Sometimes we run away with mental energies. In fact, oftentimes we do. That's how we create our realities. In terms of getting stuck in trauma loops, is because we activate those mental energies that had no business being in our fields to begin with. So what do I mean by that? I mean the things that are spoken over you. There's a verse in the Bible, and for those of you who haven't known me for a minute, I believe all things have value, but not all things are 100% sound. And the Bible as a text, in my opinion, and you don't have to agree with anything I ever say, but in my opinion and in my experience, the Bible is a book that's been lifted from a lot of ancient text, and there is truth that can be found, but there's also a lot of distortion and a lot of truth that's been used for the purpose of control and the inversion spell of the false matrix. But like I said, there's still things to be gleaned. There's still value that can come from reading the text if you're able to use proper discernment. And one verse that I think about in this energy is that life and death, it lives in the power of the tongue. Life and death lives in the power of the tongue. And if you look at the Magician card in the tarot, which is the card of Mercury, the planet Mercury, which is Gemini's ruler. So the Magician is connected both to Gemini and Virgo energy, because it's actually the planet Mercury that card represents. You will see that the Magician has all four of the themes, or all four of the articles that are connected to the suits. So the Magician has has a cup, a pentacle, a sword, and a wand. And the Magician is able to utilize, really, because you're dealing with Mercury energy, mental energy. And I believe that is what the infinity symbol above his or her head in the more classic renditions of tarot decks represents, is that mental energy. And mental energy, it's expressed in one way through the mouth. It's also expressed through the hands. Gemini rules over the hands, and Taurus rules over the throat. So Taurus is the message, and Gemini is the transmission of that message, because it's mental energy going out into the world to do something, right? So Gemini teaches us how to utilize our mental energy as magicians, right? And in the false matrix, in their esoteric traditions, we were taught that all is mind. That's not necessarily true. It begins in the mind, but the truest magicians are the ones who are able to utilize their emotions very powerfully in combination with their minds to bring forth things into the material. And the mental aspect of that is the magician, and it's connected to Gemini. So I say that because there's power in your voice, there's power in your words, so much power that you can speak things into existence and you can speak things out of existence. And this is important for you to know, because if you've been around beings, if you've been under the authority, especially as a child, in these educational systems, community, family, etc., where you are constantly being spoken things over you that are in opposition with who you really are, those spells have created realities and timelines that should have never been your own. And psychic attack energy is really interesting because you can be next to someone. We all have the skill of telepathy, even if we haven't fully tapped into it, right? They don't tell us this in the false matrix. So this is why you can be in one reality, or even if you're living in a home with other people, like say you have roommates or family, you can be in your own bedroom, in your own little world, and you can move into another room and you can feel the energy shift. And if you're paying close attention to your own energy, you can even notice a shift in your thinking. And that, my friends, is showing you the power of other people's mental energy on your mental body. Meaning that people's thoughts, especially when you have a very powerful emotional connection or a connection that's been forged through living with people and merging your energy fields with them in some way, people's thoughts are very, very powerful. And not everything you think about yourself is firstly true, and not everything you think about yourself is your true organic thoughts. Okay, so just a quick lesson on psychic attacks. In your divine, sovereign, aligned state, where your mental body belongs solely to you and is connected directly to source, you will never want to do anything to harm yourself, and you will never think of anything. You will never think anything about yourself that doesn't align with the truth of who you are in your power, for better or for worse, because in your power, you can also admit your flaws and your weakness. That's a powerful thing to do. But what's not powerful is living in a state of constant shame that doesn't belong to you, or thinking things about yourself that render you powerless or make you feel like you can't do something, or make you think you're something you're not, etc. Those thoughts aren't your own. And even if you've courted those thoughts for any amount of time, they still aren't your own, and you can still clear them out of your fields. And in Gemini season, it's very, very powerful for you to resculpt your mind in conjunction with who you truly are. Aries begins to give you a refresher course. Every transit through Aries gives you a refresher course on your sovereignty and the truth of your divine identity. That's where the zodiac wheel begins. That's why your ascendant is the door into the first house, which is ruled over Aries traditionally. Because Aries is here to get your mind right, to get you back into alignment with who the fuck you actually are. Okay? And then you move to Taurus, and Taurus begins to remind you of the wealth and the resources you have that back that shit up. Because I love my Aries folk. I love them because they teach us how to have like this swagger, right? But Taurus comes and helps us to back that shit up. And then Gemini helps us to establish it in our reality by really shifting our mental constructs. So I'm saying that to you also because if you've been under this mental cloud, it very well could have been, it probably is, some form of psychic attack. It could be those energies, though, also swirling around in your mental fields, coming up for your acknowledgement and your recognition, because it's time for you to clear that and to create a new story based upon your identity that Aries has unlocked and that Taurus is backed up, and that you now are learning how to align your thoughts with. So as such, the clarity that might be coming through for you is based upon your ability to align with the story that Aries gave you, and to rise up and to clear all of the old mental fuck shit and psychic inversion spells and attacks and all that other stuff that wants to come to the surface as you do that, because it's supposed to. You're purging that. And even as other beings try to send that shit to you, because Gemini season, in all frankness, for me, what I've come to notice is that it brings up a lot of shadow energies. Well, every season does it in a different way, but with Gemini, what you'll notice is a lot of people, a lot of heavy projection, right? So when you're walking in your light, in your truth, or I should say in your alchemized light and dark, when you're walking in that and your fullness and your true expression, people don't even realize why sometimes, but they have an issue with you. And the true reason why is because you are helping to wake them up into that part of self that they've been ignoring, and they might not quite know how to tap into it yet. And so because that would take them out of their regular homeostasis, their normal response is to push it out of their reality. And so that's what people do when they get triggered, So as you realize this, and I just did a video about, working through a lot of that too, as you go through this cloudiness you might have felt, understand and overstand, it's a combination of all these things. It's a combination of people psychically attacking you, because right now, it's a mental and emotional shit show in these streets, because as the frequency of the planet shifts, as these solar flares keep pelting the earth, it is shaking all of the veneers, all of the masks, all of the false personas, all of the blankets that have been covering the truth, and it's doing it first in us. So everyone's being shaken, but the difference is some people are doing the work of going within and finding out why, so that they can rise back into their power. And some people don't want to, don't have the tools for whatever reason, it's their business. But in the midst of that, we're dealing with a lot of everyone's constantly being triggered in different ways for the purpose of healing, right? So there's that, right? And then there's also the fact that even with that being said, psychic attacks, even people triggering you on purpose to try to harvest and all of that, it don't even matter, because at the end of the day, in order for you to get to this higher state of mental wisdom, mental unlocking, reprogramming your mind into truer thoughts, words, perspectives, visions, statements for yourself. In order to do that, you have to see where you're still out of alignment. And that's what the triggers, the psychic attacks, that's what all of them show. Because at the end of the day, when you start to rise into your power, and people are trying to psychically attack you with things about you that are not true, they're not truly aligned with who you are and your power, you no longer can get shaken or triggered as much, because if somebody comes to you and tells you an outright lie, you're not going to be offended most of the time. It's only when somebody comes and tells you something that you've internalized as truth and you're struggling with, that you then might get defensive or project or push it away, or go in and do the work, which is a smart thing to do, so all of this is happening to bring you a profound sense of clarity, because as we come to the close of Gemini season, we walk into Cancer season. So the lessons around mental energy close, and with Cancer come the lessons of aligning with your divine heart. That's what Cancer, Leo, and Virgo do. So in other words, and I think I spoke about this in the last video too, but it bears repeating, Aries, Taurus, Gemini deal with the calibration of your mental body, the calibration of your mental body. Cancer, Leo, Virgo deal with the calibration of your emotional body. So the first 6 signs are all about the calibration of self. And that's the medicine that they bring all of us. Whether you have them in your chart, whether you like them or not, which, you really should learn to find the value and the beauty in every single sign because it exists in you. And when you are very resistant because you've had bad experiences with people who carry that energy and they've exploited it or they've used it in fucked up ways, when you throw the baby out with the bathwater, it's actually a form of self-rejection, right? So anyway, this also may be for you if you're in a situation where you've been feeling intensely that there's more than meets the eye, or there's something you're feeling intensely but you can't put your finger on. Because, Gemini energy is really potent for gaslighting, but it's also really potent for uncovering gaslighting. Because every sign's weakness is its strength. And that goes for all life, including you and I. That's real love, is when you're able to understand and overstand that you can't actually love someone if you don't adore their flaws in some way. Because if you don't, then you have no right to have access to them, because you only want them when they're strong. But their flaws are what make them strong. And their strengths are what make them flawed, because we are beings who are expressing polarity in human form. And that's the beauty, because we're here to materially be magicians, and you can only be a magician when you master the art of utilizing polarity to bring all things into harmony, beginning with your own internal state. So I also heard that the entire grid has broken, bottomed out, and is disintegrating entirely. And when I say the entire grid, I'm talking about a grid that supported some kind of mental loop. Some kind of mental loop you found yourself stuck in. And this is oftentimes ancestral in nature. These are thoughts that get carried on, thoughts and behaviors that get carried on generationally and get ingrained in different beings within a family, based upon the family energy system and the role that everyone's assigned. So what do I mean by that? When you look at a family that isn't interested in evolving, just interested in staying in that generational traditional loop of dysfunction, you will notice that with every generation, the family energy system has, everyone has a role to play in keeping the dysfunction afloat. So the most common roles we hear about are the scapegoat and the golden child, right? And the scapegoat has a role to play in keeping the dysfunction afloat. The role the scapegoat plays in keeping the dysfunction afloat is by staying silent and taking their shit. That keeps the dysfunction going. That's why they don't like it when you begin to speak and disrupt the homeostasis of the family energy system if you're a scapegoat and you find your voice. Because your energetic assignment in that energy system is to be the container that holds all of the fucked upness, so nobody actually has to do the work of seeing it, healing, and transmuting it on their own terms. Instead, you're supposed to take all that shit and keep quiet, right? So everybody has a role to play. Everyone has a role to play in keeping the dysfunction alive, and therefore everyone, for as long as they're playing the role, is dysfunctional. Even the golden child. Because they're not getting an opportunity to heal either. They're being utilized also against their divine truth and purpose. Whether it appears that they have it all or not, it doesn't really fucking matter. Right? So the entire grid has broken, bottomed out, and is disintegrating. And this is important also because we're coming up to Cancer season, and I've been talking about this, I think maybe more on my platform, like in the articles I write. Like, I've been talking more about how, and in some of the audio messages I've done over there, but I've been talking about this full moon coming up in Capricorn on July 10th. And how I was getting messages since, Aries or Taurus season, about this full moon, like disintegrating these ancestral grids, these ancestral grids that kept the generational trauma and abuse systems in families lit up, where many of you were scapegoats and black sheep, and as such, that grid held you into a position. It held you into a position through generational repetition of energy, which created a foundation that was really hard to break out of. And even if you did break out of it, especially those of you whose families have been involved in these orders, societies, covens, factions, groups, whatever you want to call them, for the furtherance of success in the false matrix, even if you got out of it physically, you know that there were spiritual repercussions for that, right? And so that's all to do with the grid system that you were locked in energetically because of the things that they had pledged you to, but also the grid system that you were locked into that had established itself in you because of the power of the energy that existed within that family and that bloodline, because it had established itself over generations of thought, of words, of passing that on, of feeling, of action. And that's really difficult to clear, right? So many of you have considered yourself to be generational curse breakers, which is a moniker I reject, because I ain't here to do anything but break the curses that tried to bind me at this point. And a lot of that generational curse breaker stuff is designed to keep you clearing karma in family lines that you shouldn't have been in to begin with. So I talk about that. I have a decree for that, etc. But yeah, so I reject that because it keeps you in the karmic loop, which this full moon in Sagittarius is also breaking you the fuck out of, because the card that comes out of the Nine of Wands, which is that card that speaks of those of you who've had that story, those of us who've had that story, the card that follows that is the motherfucking Ten of Wands, right? When you begin to actually dismantle, not only dismantle that story, but begin to walk into the new one, because that's what tens are, ones and the zero, the end and the beginning happening simultaneously. So we're moving into the full moon in Sagittarius, which in energy is a Ten of Wands. So tune into my Tarot Astrology Ascension report that will be coming out around that time on my other channel, Solarah Rises, because we're going to get into the energy of that, because it's a 10-10 full moon, a 10-10 full moon, right? Okay, so the entire grid that supported this vision block and confusion is broken, bottomed out, and disintegrating. So another message that's coming through right now is that this vision block also has to do with certain mind control programming. Okay, so that's what Gemini also deals with, that MK Ultra stuff. That's Gemini, right? Gemini deals with the ways our minds are controlled. And again, because it deals with how our minds have been controlled nefariously, it also gives us the keys to program our minds back into true source coded settings, right? So I'm going to get into the details of some of these downloads in another reading when it comes to this particular mind control theme. But I will say that part of the cloudiness you've been going through could have to do with MK Ultra that is disintegrating, but also MK Ultra that they are seeking to reconnect you to. So again, like I said to you before, within the false matrix, even though it's falling apart, it only falls apart completely in your reality when it falls apart within you. Okay, so I say that because those mind control MK Ultra programs, they get reactivated when you try to move into something higher. they try to reactivate that. There's a lot of mechanisms within the false matrix and within the construct of all of these spells and shit that was done. For those of you, again, who are people who come from these really heavy family lines where they've been involved in this stuff. There's a lot of mechanisms designed that when you start to climb in frequency to put you back into your place. Through your own trauma story, through the ancestral grids, through entities moving through other people, through them even sending people out physically, to do all manner of things to lower your frequency in a myriad of ways, like even physically with devices, etc. All of that shit is real, and so. I say that because there's a lot of attempts right now to put you back under that spell without your knowledge, right? Because it's always going to be at this point without your knowledge. And if that's the case, then you might notice certain bodily, you might notice first and foremost, like shifts in your thought, shifts in your frequency suddenly, where all of a sudden you start thinking things or catastrophizing out of nowhere where you weren't before, because your frequency is being purposely fucked with. And you might notice it in the dream space, and very specifically with certain physical symptoms. And what I've come to notice, and this is what I'm going to speak about at a later time, but the left-hand side of the back of your neck, your head, your shoulder, that part oftentimes will play up when that kind of stuff is happening. And it goes into that whole covering of the left eye thing that they like to do in their stupid ass groups to let you know that they are psychically controlling you in some way, shape, or form, or they are wanting to be a part of that. That's one of the signals with the covering of the eye. There was a famous rapper who knew this and got, they dealt with her for that, with that name. But the left eye, that part, that side of your brain, your body, your head, your neck, your shoulder, your hand, your arm, and it will lead all the way down to the hip because everything's interconnected. That can also be those spells leaving, as well as the attempt to re-trigger it and put it back into place. Okay? Alrighty. So some dates that have been coming up for me that maybe you want to think about also have been going on, because this will have to do with whatever you need clarity about, or whatever was happening at this time might have to do with what you're breaking out of, or very specifically with these attempts to put you back in your place, right? So the dates that I have are from the beginning. We've got from March to May of 2022, from March to May of 2022, from August to November of 2022, March and April of 2023, October and November of 2023, and August and September of 2024. All of these months and the things that were occurring in your individual timelines might have been significant, as there were major attempts to feed and strengthen their grids through death magic, and to feed certain ancestral entities that were part of the networks within the false matrix that kept it operating. But those workings couldn't hold against you or the new energies on this planet. So in other words, they may have had an effect, but they couldn't hold. Because once upon a time, those things would have happened and you wouldn't have even known. And many of you knew and you were fighting, which makes all the difference. Another message that's coming through is that someone will be meeting their end or dying because of this, or losing everything once you're fully recovered in your power. And they're still pulling at your energy, but you're too strong for them now. So these would be the people who have been a part of these orders, these societies, these factions, the handlers, the ones who've been assigned the position of keeping you under mind control, keeping you out of your power, keeping you oblivious to the truth of who you are, keeping you in low mental states, so that you would be thought of as being crazy or eccentric or out there or diagnosed with all manner of so-called mental illnesses that actually aren't illnesses. It's just you seeing the fucking truth, but they don't want your third eye open because they've been binding your left one. They've been binding it, the left side, right? In order to control your mind, control your thoughts, control even your speech, control your throat. Let's go into my deck that deals with the fuck shit. A lot of evil eye flying right now. Government agents are in on this, aren't they always? Here we have it again. This one came out the other day again, I think. They are doing everything they can to destabilize you so they can harness. These are root chakra assaults. So root chakra assaults can manifest in a myriad of ways. And with this, the government agencies are in on this. This is exactly confirming what I was saying before about certain instruments being used and certain people being sent to be within your physical range in order to do that, right? To fuck with your frequency, to record your frequency, all manner of shit, right? They do, because they know who you are and they know what time it is, okay? We've also got isolation spells. Okay, so that would be trying to get you alone and then to do these things. And the reason for that would be because if they can get you alone and you're not in your right mind, and when I say your right mind, I'm talking about you not being in your right mind in terms of being aligned with your sacred truth and power, right? If they can get you out of that state and into a lower frequency through their devices, etc., and they can isolate you, then that is that can be like a party for those entities that want to come and talk to you and tell you shit that's not true, and for you to get lost in that, right? It also, if you know how to utilize the power of Mercury Virgo style, like the Hermit, because Mercury also rules over Virgo, and Virgo is where you get alone to actually discern the truth of that shit. It also can help you to hone in deeper on what is actually going on to see more clearly, right? So this is what I'm saying. A lot of these things that once worked and had power over you, they don't anymore, because you figured out how to alchemize this stuff. You figured out how to not get lost in the sea of emotions, or the sea of triggers, or the sea of the reactivated spells, or the sea of the psychic attacks. You've learned how to see them, call them out for what they are, bind the fuckers that are doing that shit because they're breaking universal laws, right? And I'm not talking about binding people per se. I'm talking about binding things out of your energy, right? Which you can do, right? So, because you're learning how to see things for as they are, and you're learning who you are and what your rights are and how it is you can assert that, right? So, a lot of this stuff, it's annoying. It might cause delay. It might mess with your day, to some extent, but it doesn't shift you out of who it is you are or what it is you're doing anymore, which is actually still the intention, right? We have Karmic Father coming up. And we also have solar plexus block attacks and or distortion. this is where I'm going to stop in this pile, which is connected to the father energy also. Your solar plexus, your root. Interestingly enough, root and solar plexus are connected to paternal energies and paternal lines often. Actually, solar plexus is connected to both, but a lot of the time, the way things get carried down the line in the solar plexus, even when it's coming through the mother, is through paternal energy, meaning that the solar plexus is both because it's the seat of your internalized emotions, right? But the way you handle it is to do with your masculine energy. But because you're dealing with emotional energy, you're still dealing with feminine. I don't want to get too far into that discussion. I think I talk about it I do talk about it in a lot of videos, but you can find it also on, if you're very interested in solar plexus fuckery, I did a lot of reels on that about, I think in September, October, November 2023. There were a lot of reels, and the reels will direct you to the actual videos. But yes, it's interesting because the solar plexus is often the seat of family trauma or how it's affected you. And the root chakra is the seat of the family trauma as it's become established generationally. So there's something shifting in your emotional body very powerfully now when it comes to moving out ancestral commands that were designed to put your power in someone else's control. And I say that because the solar plexus is the seat of your will. And when you've been programmed against yourself, especially by parents, you are literally giving them your will. And that is something that parents were taught to do intergenerationally, that lived in the root chakra energy. So all of this is being dismantled. We also have food fuckery. So for those of you who are still connected to family members who you know do this, be aware of that food fuckery. And even if you're not, make sure that you are connecting with how you nourish yourself. Because the food fuckery, I'm just being shown this, it can come up in other ways. Like all of a sudden you're on a really good health kick and you're doing really well, or you're changing your eating habits, and then all of a sudden you start to go in the opposite direction. Whether it's because you've been triggered and you begin to do like you begin to emotionally eat, or whether it's like you just start out of nowhere having these cravings. That can also be spell work, right? And that is to lower your frequency. Because if you are eating things that aren't alive, it will alter your frequency. It will alter the way you're able to think. It will alter the way you're like. This is why I got. For those of you who don't know, I'm a trained naturopathic chef, trained in medical herbalism and functional nutrition, very specifically for mental health and neurology. And the reason I chose that was because I got into that field because I wanted to understand and overstand how what we eat affects our mood and outlook, right? And so food has a very powerful effect physiologically on the things that support your mood and that support, therefore, how you're able to function in life, right? So if on a physiological level it does that, it does it on a frequential level too, right? So you notice the difference, maybe even in your clarity of thought, when you're eating the way, I don't want to just say healthily, I want to be very specific, eating the way your body needs at any given time, versus when you feel your eating is out of control, or when you feel you have no choice in what it is you're able to eat. You notice the difference. And so the food fuckery can also be causing situations where you're not eating properly, or you're put in scenarios where you're not able to eat properly. So for everyone, that's going to be different. It can be finances, it can be time constraints, it can be a matter of things. But know that in this case, in this scenario, the design is to lower your frequency, to lower your mood, and to lower your frequency. And why does your frequency need to be lowered beyond just the energetic siphoning and the controlling of the mind? In order to get you to reject your codes. You need to be I spoke about this in the last reading. You need to be a certain frequency in order to integrate the codes that are coming in at this time. And I want to be very real with you. I'm not saying that those of you who like to eat certain things and it's not considered to be healthy or at risk, At the end of the day, everyone's individual frequency is their individual frequency. For some people, they're more sensitive to food than others, And I am a believer in balance. I believe that you should also eat for joy and you should eat for pleasure. There needs to be a balance in all things, because that's what's important for maintaining your frequency too. So please don't think that if you're not eating a way that they've prescribed in the spiritual community or whatever, that you're fucked. That's a lie. That's bullshit. I'll tell you that right now. It's bullshit, because even your diet is frequentially matched by your individual needs, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically. Okay? And there's certain times that certain diets work, and there's certain times you need other diets. Like, for example, veganism is wonderful when you need to do extensive clearing. It sometimes isn't wonderful if you're under really bad spiritual attack, though, because it opens your fields. So while it might be for some people, not for everyone, because a lot of people don't have the ability anymore because our digestive systems are so fucked up to turn certain nutrients into to make those conversions in certain nutrients. Not that you can't get back to that, and that that wouldn't be your desire and all of that. That's possible too. But I want to be real with people, because there's a lot of shaming in the spiritual community around how people are ascending when it comes to diet. And I don't have time for that fuck shit, because what works for one person at one stage is not going to work for another at another stage. In fact, entering into waters like that too soon because you've been pushed into it by shame can set you back. I'm going to say that again. If you're being pushed and pressured to do something because someone else is telling you that spiritually it's the right thing to do, blah, 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 it can actually set you back, because it's not time for you to do that yet. It might be time for you at a later date. It might never be time for you, because everyone is on their own individual path, individual lesson, individual purposes, individual evolutionary process, individual needs. Okay, so got into it with the food fuckery. Alrighty, let me get into this this other deck. The other half of the deck, I should say, because it's a really thick deck. So I split it in half before I shuffle. For those of you who have children, pay attention to them. Children, pets, because they're seeking to either hurt them in the same way or use them in the shenanigans. So just be aware. And again, I never say these things to fear. That's not how I work. That's not how my guides work. It's for you to be aware. So in your power, you can do something. Because let me remind you, there's nothing that they can throw at you or do to you or bring towards you that you're not equipped to battle. It's just you remembering how. Okay, so here we go again. They are not working alone. They've hired other practitioners. I've been sensing that this week too. And that goes hand in hand with that energy I was picking up, where it said that someone will be dying because of this or losing everything once you're fully recovered, because they're still pulling at your energy, but you're too strong for them now. So they've enlisted more help. Okay. And it still won't work. It still won't work because their contract is kaput, which is why you're dealing with the things you're dealing with, and they're dealing with the things they're dealing with, or will be dealing with the things that they're dealing with. So in other words, there's no real amount of intervention that can come in to really do anything meaningful except shake you, which again, like my beautiful friend of the channel says, they're attack activations, right? They attack you to activate you back into your power, because without the attacks and without having to do the solving, you wouldn't tune back into the solution, which is part of your arsenal of gifts. Here we go. Box, jar, and container magic, which isn't surprising because we did have isolation spells coming out. Okay, so the box, jar, or container magic is very much like, very on brand with the Gemini theme. I spoke about this in the last reading, even with songs, how they can use an effigy, repeat the song, yada, 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 or keep speaking things over you in the box, in order to pierce into your psychic space and to have an effect on your thoughts, your dreams, etc. Okay, so box, jar, or container magic. So this person, whoever this is that's been messing with you, they had full conscious awareness. So this isn't things that are just happening unconsciously because, in their woundedness, which even in that, it can be very potent in a person's field. No, this is a person who's fully, and you know this, if they're hiring other practitioners, this person is fully aware of what it is they're doing. And if government agencies are involved, they're fully fucking aware of what they're doing. Okay? And they made promises that they cannot deliver on, made promises to an entity they cannot deliver on. They want you small and ashamed so they can eat and command your energy. These are vampires, right? So people who have been vampirizing you, taking your life force and using it for their own purposes, for their own material gain, and also opening you up to other people to do that too. Those of you who have issues with notable people showing up in your dreams, and you know why, that's because whatever contracts, especially family members, most of the time it's family, whatever contracts your family members have aligned themselves with through these orders, secret societies, covens, factions, groups, whatever, they not only assign you to them, they open up your energy field to be siphoned, for your charisma to be taken. It's like all manner of different tiers of your gifts are given to different beings, whether it's in entertainment, the church, the government. We talked about this before, politicians, etc. All of those who are out there who need to have this veneer of being trustworthy are often siphoning off of the ones who are the true guardians on this earth, because that trustworthiness is actually encoded in your frequency, because you have a level of integrity that maybe you've earned through millennia of garnering soul wisdom. However it was you accrued it legitimately, it was yours. So that you actually have a lot to give, which is why it's bogus and it doesn't make sense half the time that you should even be going through this stuff. But that's how severely you've been siphoned across lifetimes, generations, since the fall of Atlantis. And that's how many beings are tapping into you. It's like, how like the data control, data privacy, when you start to go on one app or platform, or you don't reject all, you accept, and then all of a sudden all of these companies have your information. It's kind of like that. Okay, we're already at 54 minutes, so I'm gonna wrap this up. This deck has been speaking to me today. It's It's the Rose Oracle, I think it's called. Let me move the microphone out of the way just for a second. It's the Rose Oracle, I think. I don't really use this too much, or haven't really used it too much. I think this was another gift from one of you beautiful people, and I've used it mostly for personal, for readings for clients, because it wasn't time. I really wanted it, and I was so excited when I got it, but it wasn't time yet for the collective energy for me to use it, for whatever reason. Probably doesn't even have to do with the deck itself. It oftentimes is personal for me. Okay, so trust the seasons, embracing change, cycles of life, transition, and growth. Trust the seasons. So that's at the bottom of the deck. What actually came out? Oh, I love it. Healing the mother line, healing ancestral work, mother line, and growing up. So a lot of divine mother codes flooding the planet, especially through the 6/6 portal. And the divine mother codes are for both your masculine and your feminine energy to come back into the correct expression, correct polarity, the correct impression, and even to undo the inversion of polarity, which I'll get into. The poles are shifting, but they're shifting first in you because your poles were inverted. I'll get into that another time. Okay, rapture. Sensuality, love, devotion, romance, ecstasy, pleasure. So the message that's been coming through for the past few days, and even today when I pulled out cards for, Moonrise Musing now, was it's time to just get lost in the things that make you feel good. And I know we say that a lot, but do we practice it? And do we practice it with trust? Because I know, for many of us, for most of us, it's not like we don't think we have the luxury to do that because of our circumstances. But the truth of the matter is, right now, for many of you, your circumstances are going to shift based upon your ability to do that without shame, without guilt, without fear. So what I mean about that is, if you can't do it without shame, without guilt, without fear, then maybe it's not fully time for you, and your time will come. Our time, we're all alchemizing through these programs, but if you know that it's your time to sit back and just fully trust and to be in the pleasure of existing again, then you're part of the group that's here to anchor some really powerful codes into the earth at this point. That's going to also open the gate for the next round of people to do it with greater ease. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up now. It's been a pleasure reading for you, sharing my downloads. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. For all information on how to work with me or book me for soul recovery sessions, that information will be in the description box below. For all information on my decrees, I will have them listed in the description box and comment section below. The most recent ones, the ones I've been doing over the past few months. There are more than the ones listed. These are just the ones from the past couple of months. So make sure to check out my Ko-Fi shop. All my decrees, both the audio and the written version ones, are for free presently, or for inspired donation. Thank you to those of you who are able to give and do. It does make a huge difference because this is my life. I do this because I strongly believe in the power of sharing liberation codes, because we're all here to be free, right? Especially those who aren't trying to imprison others. And I do it because I have a strong trust in New Earth principles. So when those of you move in that reciprocation because you can, it makes a huge difference, because we're all still transitioning right now, right? From the old into the new. So thank you. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you. And thank you to those of you who give back in different ways. I appreciate that too. I really do. Yes, what else? If you'd like to have more contact with me or my work and my guidance on a daily basis, then feel free to check out my platform, solarah.xyz, where the daily alchemies that show up, well, they've been showing up pretty regularly lately here on the community boards, but sometimes they become very sporadic, like maybe once a week or whatever. But if you want to get them every single day and delivered into your inbox, which is also an option, then you can do so by heading over to solarah.xyz, where there are also other long form content that gets released every week for free also, as well as my paid membership tiers, which is another way to have more access to what it is I'm writing and recording, or to even just to show your support to me so I can be in my purpose. If you'd like to give to my ability to do that, if you'd like to donate to me, to the channel, to my ability to continue to show up here, you can do that through the payment links that I offer below. What else? I think that's it. I'm sending you guys love, peace. To those of you who are in alignment to receive that, I send it wholeheartedly. And I will see you again soon. Be well.